Hello there. I am Kimberly Hayes-St.
And I'm Amanda Day,
and you're listening to the Fundraising Heyday podcast,
where we cover the how-tos of grants and fundraising
and how we can all do a better job of changing the world through philanthropy.
Very true. So Kimberly and I are both so excited to announce, or maybe we've already announced, I don't know, but we're just happy to share that we are returning to Grant Summit. It's the event hosted by the Grant Professionals Association. It's going to be at the end of October, and we are going to be there once again as the official podcast of Grant Summit. So what exactly does that mean, Kimberly, the official podcast?
So and then we're talking about 2024 in case you're like going back in going back in time and listening to podcasts later. And yeah, I have no idea if we mentioned it before because sometimes we record way in advance and sometimes we're right on the money. And I'm just happy to be here. So what this means, if we're the official podcast for the Grant Summit powered by the Grant Professionals Association, is that we are going to be in the exhibit hall in a quieter part where we can record, but we're actually recording. We're all kinds of I know our schedule, and we are recording some major thought leaders, some folks who have contributed so many wonderful things to the grants profession and beyond, leadership, diversity, how to do things, how not to do things, because that's also super important. So it's a great way for us to get great content all at once. And it also works for the Grant Professionals Association, because if you are a member there, you will probably see some snippets here and there. They're really good at picking out when Amanda makes really interesting facial expressions. And they make that the thumbnail, which is sort of the picture that you see on a video. But also, Amanda, you're super expressive.
Sure.
But they captured some, you look like you were in a metal band at one point. You were laughing. I generally am in profile looking like I need to be like on a new version of the nickel or something. I don't even know. But regardless of what our thumbnails look like, you'll be seeing us there. Particularly if you watch on YouTube, you'll be hearing us. But you'll be, more importantly, you're going to be hearing from a ton of people in the grant writing community, because grant writing is not a solo sport.
Absolutely. So if your organization has any sort of event and you've never thought about having a podcast for that event, let me be the first to suggest that. Fundraising Heyday would love to chat with you about all the fun we can bring, the content we can help you create. It really is just a great win-win to have a podcast at your conference, because it's content for the podcasters, it's content for your organization. It kind of creates a buzz and a stir. And it's just a lot of fun to have something like that. So if that's something you're ever interested in, we would love to talk to you. You can reach out to us at hello@heydayservices.com to learn more.
It's all true. So we're switching gears. We're gearing up or gearing down, or I don't even know, gearing sideways. We're going from like automatic to standard. If you're into transmissions, I don't know, there could be some four-wheel drive coming up. But today we're going to talk about something that not a lot of people talk about, maybe not enough people talk about, and it can be a really important part of larger scale grant proposals, particularly those that are highly competitive. And that is the letters of support, often considered an afterthought. It shouldn't be. We're going to tell you why. So we are absolutely thrilled that SNF Writing Solutions is our podcast sponsor for the second half of 2024, season 7, if you can believe it. Founder and CEO Stacy Fitzsimmons, a self-proclaimed data geek, is a seasoned grant pro who's raised and managed hundreds of millions of dollars. She's a certified compression planner, and she has broad management experience across a lot of different industries like restaurants, retail, technology, healthcare, nonprofits, the arts, and state government. She is sharing her decades of experience bit by bit with us, so take a listen.
Stacy, what is compression planning and what is it you like most about it?
I had to pick one thing that I like most about it. Okay,
Give us
I'm
three.
going to break the rules. It's not going to be just one. Okay, so
Okay.
what is compression planning? Let's start there. Compression planning is a storyboard planning method developed by McNellis and Company in 1978, which is a great vintage. And so it's been around a long time. Disney used it. Still, Disney Company still uses it. So it's a way of getting to decisions faster. So you're going to actually be tactile in the process. There's cards, there's storyboards, but it's question based. So instead of just saying, we need a need statement, okay, you're going to maybe delve into a few different questions. What do we see as our community struggling with on this topic? How can we best invest in the community in order to serve their community? Okay, so it's all question based. And you start out with an exploration phase where anything goes, and then you focus down. So all of the right brain people get their time, and then the left brain people that are the first to say no about something get their time too. So it's very balanced, but you can actually get a program design done in 4 to 8 hours, and instead of it taking months. And by doing it all in one clump of session, you don't have that lag of doing it an hour at a time where you have to recap what happened the week before. And it's more structured than just normal brainstorming. And I think that's the thing that I like the best, is that it is brainstorming, but it has a structure, and it is question based. So people are more apt to participate than just us saying, so what should we do?
To find out more about Stacy Fitzsimmons and her incredible team at SNF Writing Solutions, visit snfwritingsolutions.com. If you want the tools and resources to up your organization's great game, check out their services provided page and reach out to them. Now, Kimberly, I know you have a fairly recent experience with helping to create and gather over 40 support letters for a large grant proposal.
It me.
She's done it. We're going to get to that later in the episode, but I'd like to start out the show with a quick description of what support letters are for folks who maybe are new to the grant profession, or maybe they've never had to deal with it, because that word can mean different things to different people. So let's get us all on the same page.
So what I think of most often when I think of support letter or letters of support or LOS, because acronyms, it's a letter from either an individual, could be an elected official, could be a community leader, or an agency, could be a nonprofit, could be a government agency, could be a local business, although that's a little rare, but it really kind of depends on the program or project or ask of your proposal.
Well, I will say in local government, I got a lot of letters from businesses, especially if we were doing improvements to maybe a road in front of their business that they are excited about. So businesses are
not uncommon. So just sort of spreading that the idea of what it could be is fairly wide. And again, as Amanda said, it depends on the kind of project that you're doing. If you're doing an after school program, you probably don't want to approach the business across the road unless the kids are doing some sort of project on the grounds of that business. You've got to match your letters of support with what it is you're doing. And generally, this letter of support is, wow, this organization that's applying is doing such good work. We are so excited to be supporting them, particularly as they augment, expand, whatever it is they're doing to their program. And love the management of this agency. So that's generally, when Amanda talked about the 40 letters, that included a mix, but it definitely included letters of support. So also included in that mix, and included in other kinds of grant proposals, letters of support that I've worked on before, both private and public, there are also letters of commitment, right? And it's more of a, instead of a, hey, we think they're great, we've been around knocking around this community together for 20 years, but by golly, This is more like, say you have an after school program, and you are partnering with a community garden down the road for something. Then it might be it's not, I wouldn't call it legally binding, because I have drafted these things and labeled them as letters of commitment, and your girl's not a lawyer. But it's sort of a gentle spelling out. It's almost like a scope of work, right?
Mhm.
It's like the after school program is going to provide the kids and the transportation and the supervision, and we're all insured and whatnot. And the community garden, to extend this example, well, the community garden maybe is writing this letter of commitment, right? Because it's going with the proposal that the after school program is doing. So the community garden is, hey, we're going to supply, the volunteers that have met this certain security criteria. They're going to teach a little curriculum around growing your own food, or plants that like to grow together. Then we're going to dig in the garden, and then the kids will be able to take some produce home, or there'll be a cooking class, whatever it is. So they're saying they're going to provide this, we're going to provide that, and it's signed by both agencies. So it's so that if you are asking for money as an after school program, you're asking for, I'm just making this up, $50,000 in supplies and cooking equipment, and I don't even know, safety equipment, out of background checks, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's that you're demonstrating with this signed letter by both agencies. Yeah, the other agency kind of knows that they're providing this and is okay with it, and they're supporting that.
Yeah.
That sort of the next step up from that are things like memorandums of understanding or memorandums of agreement. And that's sort of a little more formal. It's not something that we're necessarily talking about today. To me, the biggest difference, a letter of commitment is maybe a little bit more general. And then an MOU or an MOA is going to be super specific with maybe dates and times and things really, really spelled out, lots of detail.
Yeah.
So that's just a brief overview. Amanda, I bet you want to add some stuff to that.
Well, and I would just say too, like I've had plenty of funders that they'll distinguish letter of support just means they're in support. Letter of commitment means they're bringing something to the table. And oftentimes I've had the experience where we didn't both have to sign it. It was just whoever was providing the outside agency that was bringing something, they might be the only one to sign it. So it's not always, and this is why we're talking about every funder's a little different in what sometimes I've had some funders go letter of support, and a letter of support means this person is supporting you by they're providing cash or contributions. And it's like, oh, I would consider that a letter of commitment, but okay, that's what you mean. So either way, again, your mileage will vary depending on what the funder wants, and they typically spell it out. But as a general rule, I think those kind of separations give you an idea between
And
support, commitment, and
I,
MOU.
I mean, as always, you make a really good point. You really have to read the RFP, the NOFO, the whatever the funding announcement is called, whatever the instruction manual, because they're like 10 acronyms for it. It's
Yeah.
just, and that should tell you something. There are 10 different acronyms for the same grant instruction guide, right?
Yeah.
That kind of lack of standardization free falls and flows gently into everything from goals and objectives and outputs and inputs and outcomes into letters of support, letters of commitment, MOUs, MOAs. So I don't want to create a confusing alphabet soup, but there are those kinds of categories and gradations. But as Amanda said, your mileage with each funder is going to vary. And that holds true even for different grant cycles within the same larger agency. So it's just knowing the different types of letters, I think, that could be out there is just going to give you a leg up. And also, pro tip number one, please God, don't sleep on those letters, as the children say. Don't sleep on those letters, but I'm probably not using that phrase correctly, because what I mean is also in two ways. Don't forget how important they are, but in the second way, don't leave it to the last minute. Please don't.
Yep.
It can make or break many a grant proposal. And the reason I'm so adamant about that is because I just finished a big grant review panel with the Department of Education, the federal agency. And in many cases, the letters of support, when they were there or when they weren't, or when they were good or when they were not, it's part of the scoring process. And millions of dollars were at stake. And someone who didn't have any or didn't have them done or just had one, and it was actually from the organization itself that was submitting the proposal, it's like, and it was based on collaborative work. This was the whole basis of that. It can make a difference. It can make a difference. And when the top scorers were the only ones getting funded because there were so many applicants, and by top, I mean like 93 points and up out of a possible 100, it can make a big difference.
Yeah.
It can make no difference in the thing.
Yep. So, well, and before you jump in and think, okay, I'm going to start getting support letters for every application I ever do.
Nope.
Yeah, let's be clear. That's not what we're saying. It can vary. Basically, I've seen it three different ways. One, I've seen funders that require support letters, and they may say, we require a minimum of 2 up to 5, or we require a minimum of this or whatever. Obviously, if they're required, that's a step you're going to take and you're going to make that happen, right? I've seen other funders say it's optional. Like if you want to, you can, but it's not a requirement. And so if that's the case, I usually try to provide them when they say it's optional, just because it shows that you do have outside support. However, you need to be mindful of any page limitations. You may have a funder who's like, you have 20 pages maximum. And if you've already written the application and the budget and all the other things, and you're already at 20 pages, you don't want your support letters to put you over the page limit. If it counts.
That depends. And again, you're going to know that because you're going to read the instructional guide, aka RFP and NOFO, EIEIO, whatever it is. It's going to say it in there.
Yep. So optional is number 2. And then number 3, sometimes they will strictly say forbid them. They'll just say, do not submit any support letters. And guess what? Don't do it. If they tell you not to, don't do it. They don't want them. They're not going to look at them. And you don't want to be seen as someone who's not following the rules when it comes to a grant proposal. So just make sure you understand where the funders stand.
Yeah. It's less work. If they're not asking for it, if they say, we don't want any of that, we just want you to answer questions in the portal and have a nice day. Answer the questions in the portal and try and have a nice day.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make extra.
Absolutely.
I will type up if it is optional. I am always going to push my clients, push myself to get it in. Just like if there's an optional question at the end of a grant application that's like, it's just optional, but if there's anything else that you think might help, and I'm like, impact report, marketing brochure, video, or something. I always try my hardest to, if it's optional, I want to do it because
if they're giving you space, share more.
Tell your story.
Yep.
Tell your story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No. So they're support letters just have some basic components, I would say. And I know we're going to get to this a little bit later, but maybe we won't because maybe I'll forget. So I'd like to say this now. If just a pro tip, I write the letters of support or the MOAs or the MOUs, or I am supervising or working with or partnering with someone who does.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so easy to create the draft, send the draft to the person, ask them to look at it, make any edits or revisions they like. Then I put this in I'm like, then once you review it and make any changes that are pertinent, please print it on letterhead, sign it and scan it and return it to me or return it to the contact at the client's agency or whatever it is. Every single time. I have never had someone come to me and go, you pushy grant writing lady, you.
Yeah, how dare you?
Dare you write a letter of support and put my name on it and ask me to review it? I want to create it from scratch because I've got nothing else to do today. It's not been something I've experienced. There's got to be someone out there who has experienced that.
True.
I haven't, and I've been doing this for more than I counted up my years the other day that I've been doing this, and we are north of 25. We're just north of that. So I've never had that happen. I've written a lot of letters. I feel like most people, there will be exceptions. Most people really appreciate it. They're busy, you're busy, you can hit the highlights. I usually follow a format. And also pro tip number 3. I don't send the same letter with the same wording out to all the people. I don't know why I need to say that. I do know why.
Because I've seen applications where there are copies, 100 letters that are the exact same word. It means nothing at that point. You're like, why didn't you just do one big signature page?
I mean, save some paper, hug a tree, but also here's the thing. Different agencies are going to support your agency for different reasons.
Absolutely.
If we go back to the after school program and the community garden, yay. But then maybe they get a letter of support from the school district, right? With the partner schools, or maybe a principal, one of those schools. Well, what a principal of a school or a superintendent of a school district has to say about an after school program are going to be very different than a community garden. Maybe the after school program is 15 years old, but the community garden partnership is 2 years old. Don't you think there's going to, I mean, you know what I mean? It's just like, let's think on this. Or if you're getting a letter from the mayor or a letter from your congressperson, it's going to be different than the letter from the retirement community down the road that also provides gardening lessons for kids. You know what I mean? It's just going to be different. So the letter should be different too. So this is just me offering that up. Not only as a grant developer, grant professional, grant writer, but also as a grant reviewer. Yeah. Don't be doing that. Don't be doing that. Better, as Amanda said, better to have, if there's no limit, or if they suggest 3 to 6 letters, say, and you'll know that because you'll be reading the instruction guide, which has many, many names, as we've already talked about. Better to have 3 really good ones than 6 identical ones.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't make any sense to me. So they will have a similar format. I usually like to keep those letters to 1 page.
Same.
I just feel like that's easy. Usually the intro paragraph is, because again, it's coming from someone who is supporting the agency that's applying for the grant. So it's like, hey, we're this agency. We've been around for a long time. And we are happy to write this letter of support because this agency's been our long-term partner. And here's how we're connected to them. I mean, it's a lot better written than that.
That's the gist. That's the gist of what you're saying.
It is. And this program that we are supporting will do X, Y, and Z for the community that the applicant agent is serving, right? That's just straightforward stuff. And now, depending on how closely the agency is going to be involved, like if it's more of a letter of commitment and they're going to be maybe providing some outcomes data, I'm going to take you back to that community garden. They're probably going to need to do like hours spent, volunteer hours, classes taught. Maybe there's attendance that they need to share, whatever it may be. I always like for the agency that's partnering up to say, we're committed to providing the data needed for the outcomes reporting that the benevolent funder, although I don't use that language because that's not nice, but that's what I'm thinking. Benevolent overlord funder is requesting. And that this organization that we're working with, they've been in this community for a long time. They're the right ones to do this grant. Happy to answer any questions you may have. You can find me at email and phone number, love the management. That's kind of it.
That sums up what I typically write too.
Yep.
We've kind of mentioned this a little bit at the beginning, but when you're thinking about who you get your support letters from, you really need to think about who is your agency? Who do you serve? What is your project? Who is it going to impact? Because you don't want to just, you may be like, oh, I know the grant writer at the school K-12 school system. They can get me a letter. Well, if my project is I am fixing some old historical homes that are nowhere near the schools, and the schools are not going to ever come there on field trips or anything. Like, why am I getting a letter from the school? Like, there's no connection there. So you really want to think about, who does it make sense? If I was doing a historic preservation type project, I'd probably get letters from the local historic preservation society if we have one. Maybe if you have a local women's club, who that's one of their part of their mission is work on things like that.
Ooh,
Maybe
a tourism bureau or something, depending on how big the place. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe some of the neighbors who live around there are excited to see this old dilapidated home that's kind of hurting their property values. They're so excited this is going to happen, right? So who you ask for, it really does depend on the project. Who's going to be affected, who's going to be a champion, who's going to be excited about it. And this just goes back to, I know Kimberly and I have talked about this on previous episodes, but it's so important, as whether it's you, the grant person, maybe if you're the employee of the organization, or the project director or your executive director, but somebody within your organization needs to be making connections and building relationship with other organizations, because you can't just roll up and be like, hey, historical society president, I know we've never talked before. I know you know nothing about our agency. We'd love a support letter from you. Can you get that for me in 2 weeks? So you really want to make sure that you're building those relationships and connections so that you can make that happen. And, when I'm consulting, I really lean on whoever I'm working with, at the client's agency, like, hey, who do you guys know? And I'll throw out suggestions. But that, which usually leads to them going, oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah, I do know somebody. We go to Rotary together, or we this or that. So you want to make sure you build those relationships, and don't be afraid to lean on executive directors, board members, project directors, other staff members, whoever has those connections. You can, it could be hey, I need a support letter. Can you introduce me to this person, or can you just work with them directly? Like Kimberly says, I'll write it, I'll get it all to you, but you want to make sure that you have those relationships with the right people, or else there's no support letters to be had.
I swear, Amanda, I feel a story coming on, but it may be your story to tell, or maybe I'll start it and you can finish it.
Okay.
It's not your client, but I feel like maybe it was somebody in a class that you taught a long time ago, who there was someone who said that I'm back to gardens. It's just a garden kind of day for me. I don't have a garden. There's a garden.
I know exactly. Yep. It was a student in my class. I know what you're talking about. You want me to tell this story?
Yeah, man, go. Yeah.
So it was an agency that got, I think it was a city actually. A city had gotten a grant to build community gardens right at one of a large transportation organizations, they do buses and trains, right? So it was going to be right at one of the train stations. They were going to do community gardens, because the thinking is, even if you don't live nearby, you can hop on the train, ride a few stops, and there you are at your community garden. And so the funder gets the award because it sounds like a great idea. And the funder, who happened to know somebody at this transportation organization, called them up, and they're like, we're so excited you're doing a community garden at such and such station. And they were like, huh? That agency had never reached out to the transportation organization. They just assumed it's such a good idea. If we get the money, they're going to let us do it. And turns out they were getting ready to do a huge construction project there, right where the community garden was supposed to go. So it was going to be, concrete later. So
a transportation hub is probably not the best place for a community garden, not only for these big construction projects, but also lots of comings and goings and electrical stuff. And if it's a light rail or a subway system, all sorts of big dangerous things. And there is some greenery along the rail line, but that's also where the trains go. I mean, I'm not trying to be ugly, but I'm like, really, y'all?
Yeah, there's a lot of, it's not a bad idea to have it where people can get to through public transportation. Great. And I'm sure, actually, because I know the person at the transportation agency that was in my class, they were like, yeah, if they had asked us, we probably could have said, yeah, but let's put it over here. Like
very specific areas.
Yeah. So don't just assume somebody wants to partner and do a project with you because you're like, it's a great idea. They'll say yes. Maybe not.
That kind of just leans into what I wanted to talk about next anyway, which is about, please don't start, as I said earlier, don't sleep on the importance of letters of support or letters of commitment, especially if they're required or optional. But don't be trying to make that stuff up at the last minute. Don't
No.
be rolling in, even to your elected official's office. It's like if you know you're going to be going for state and federal grants, let's just put that right out there. Chances are one or all of them are going to want some kind of letters of something.
Yeah.
They may want MOUs or MOAs, because if you're talking about collaborating, that's the one where they both sign it
Mm-hmm.
in most cases. Although sometimes I've seen letters of commitment signed by both too. But what I'm saying is the time to get that in writing is not 2 days before the grant is due.
No.
It really, it isn't. It's just not good practice, but it's also just not good business. It's just not going to get you probably the results that you want.
And even if you get it, I had not too long ago, I had a client that they had actually reached out, and there was some back and forth, and someone was out of the office, and it was just kind of a cluster of things. And literally the day the grant was due, I am in their office. We're waiting any minute now for these letters to show up. And every time the clock ticks, I'm like, I still have to drive this and hand deliver it. And if this doesn't show up, and we've done all this work, and it all worked out, but like the whole day, I just was like, gonna be sick because
and you know
it's
what? What if there had been
nerve-wracking.
what if there had been a big summer storm
Yeah.
and the power goes out? What if we got lots of squirrels in Atlanta? What if a squirrel had chewed through some vital cable?
Yeah.
The squirrel had gone on to its great reward, and you are left without power. I mean, there's so many what ifs. Remember what, I forget how long ago this was, as we're recording this in August of 2024. Was it when AT&T was down and people couldn't access, like people couldn't work? You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yes. Yeah, that happened not too long ago where it was like a plug-in with somehow connected to AT&T. Phones were down, computers were down, files couldn't be accessed, like 911 couldn't be reached in some communities. Like it was.
Delta shut down. Delta, our hometown airline. I just have to say, WTF for you, my friends. That was bad. They
Yeah.
shut down.
Yeah.
And it was like there were businesses, including state agencies, that were affected. So I'm
Yeah.
not trying to
Don't
be a
wait till the last minute ever.
no, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So get a jump on it. Like when I open a grant, and once I'm like, yeah, this is a good fit for the money. Yeah, this is a good fit for the deadline. Yeah, this is a good fit. Let me see what the attachments are. And then when I sit down with the client to go, okay, let's go to the go-go. Here's what we need. And I'm like, we need a budget, we need a logic model, and we need to get the letters out. That all has to happen this week.
Mm-hmm.
And I start the letter discussion. And I'm tenacious about that, because I don't want that experience that Amanda started. There's a reason why I am not an employee and haven't been an employee since 2018. There's a reason, and that's one. Well, there are many, but that's one of them. It's like, no, we're not doing that. You just need time, and more importantly, as Amanda talked about earlier, you need to build some relationships in advance. And if you're like, we don't have time to do that, we don't have time to do this and that, then you may not have time to create a real competitive large scale grant proposal. You just may not. And if your boss is telling you that, then have them listen to this. And I'll be like, hey, boss person, it takes time and resources to be truly competitive. And if you can't or won't allocate that time, you are really stacking the deck against your agency when it comes to getting large scale transformative grants. Love, not the management.
I love it. I love it. So you're doing it early. You've got to figure out who to ask. What's the best way to make all this happen? Is really just ask people for them, right? I've never had anybody tell me no for a support letter. I'm not saying it can't happen. But for the most part, most people are willing. That's not a heavy lift, especially if you're doing like Kimberly said. And, because I usually will tell my folks like, hey, are you willing to write a letter of support? Usually they'll say yes. I learned the hard way. If I just wait for them to draft one, it's not going to happen. Because usually when I'll follow up, they'll be like, I really am happy to do it, but I'm sure there's some wording you'd like me to use, and I don't know who to send it to. So my thing is always like, I'll make the first draft. I'll send it to you. You can tweak as you see fit. And then if you'll just throw it on your letterhead sign and get it back to me, that would be incredible. And usually I don't know that I've ever had anybody change my letters. I mean, maybe a little thing here or there, they might add a personal touch. But for the most part, they usually are like, sure. Because I mean, I'm not saying anything that isn't true. And of course, I always make sure and make us sound really, really good because we are really, really good, right? And we're doing great things. So, and like Kimberly says, when you're doing all that writing, if you're writing more than one, make sure they differ. The project description may still be the same, but how it affects that person or that organization and how they're interacting with you is certainly going to be different. So they should not be carbon copies of each other.
No, it doesn't. It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make
Yeah.
sense.
Yep. So I've even had this was a unique support letter situation I had it was last year when several of our elected officials had called out for federal earmark processes.
Appropriate.
Yes, appropriations. And, every congressperson does a little bit different how they want the applications and how they want support. I know, crazy. There's no universal thing. So there was one particular representative that one of the things, not only did you have to fill out the application, but they wanted to see community support. And so they wanted residents to upload letters. Now, the organization I was working with, the city I was working with, so they put it out on social media. They had contacted, there's some community members that show up to a lot of things that they've got some context. So there were some that they were able to reach out to specifically, but for the most part, it was just announcing it. And so we kind of drafted a template letter that was like, insert your name here. We're in support of such and such. It was a park project. Here's how I would love to use the park. Insert your favorite things about park activity. So it was kind of there was going to be some standardization, but we were still leaving room for people to make it personal because we wanted it as easy as possible. Because, when you're not able to, it's not like we're collecting them and we know who to ask. It's like we're just putting it out for all the residents to hopefully submit some things. So sometimes it happens like that too. But as much information, as easy as you can make it for the people, the more likely you're going to get back good and quality support letters, in my experience.
That's true.
Anyway. Well, Kimberly, how about we wrap up talking about that humongous amount of support letters that you were able to collect in a short amount of time? So why don't you tell the people how you figured it all out and got it done and all the good stuff?
Well, first of all, it was a team effort. This was a project. This was $25 million in support of working with families who were securing stable employment that was decently paid, that was pulling them out of public benefits, but bridging that gap between receiving public benefits and then not being qualified for them because your income went up by $200 a month, but yet the bills are the same. So it's gap funding, but it was workforce development. It was a lot of things. So it was state funded project, and there were 40 letters. There were more. There was like a core of 5 organizations plus the applicant that were like the drivers.
Mm-hmm.
There were about 20 partner organizations and then some general letters of support. And how this all came together wasn't that I was doing everything. Oh, look at me, blah, blah, blah. It was a team effort, but I rather foolishly in hindsight, I'm like, oh yeah, I can do letters of support because I do them all the time. It's all good. Because I was working with another consultant and we were dividing and conquering.
Mm-hmm.
And she's excellent her name is Kathy Hatfield, and she is excellent at work plans and project management and budgets and all these things that I can do, but she's really good. So that's a beauty about working with really smart people is that you can conquer. And so at first I'm like, yeah, we'll probably do 10 or 15. And it kept growing because the project team was like, oh, well, we can get a letter from them and from them and from them. And this was highly competitive, and we knew that the letters of support were very important because the funding agency said they were, and that's all I need to hear. And so we had a list. There was the client agent, the applicant agent had someone who was wrangling the letters and tracking it on a spreadsheet that we were sharing, and we checked in. We met twice a week, and among all the other things we were checking in, that was one of them. So how I did that is I delegated and I'm like, you can do this. I'll write the letters. You need to tell me the context. I need the name of the person and the agency. And if there is any little special something, otherwise I'm going to go to, and what I did is I followed that format I discussed earlier. So the first paragraph, and this worked for letters of support and letters of commitment. So the first paragraph was, hey, I'm writing this letter in support of X. And I would vary the wording even in that, even in that first sentence, but it was the intro. It was, as the agency that was signing the letter, here's a little bit about our agency. Here's how long we've been in the area. Here we provide services and this and that. And we have worked with applicant agency to provide X and Y. So the letter of support was a little more straightforward about that. And, we just think this agency is the right one to do this because of their long-term partnerships in the community, works to that effect. And then would have just the standard closing I've talked about before. The letters of commitment were set up the same, but I had in the middle, there were bullet point lists of the specific things that agency was going to do. So the applicant agency didn't need to sign that letter of commitment, just the agency that was writing the letter. So it's like, hey, as a part of this project X, we're going to be providing these 4 things. Bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. We're also committed to supporting the outcomes and program tracking required for this project. And a closing sort of paragraph summing up why this was so needed in this area. So I followed that format, and I would just, if I had extra information provided to me, I would use it. If not, I would go to each person or each agency's website and use their history, put it in, use their language of how they referred to themselves and how they referred to the people that they serve. Use that language so that the person receiving the draft of this letter would be like, oh, well, this is, because what I wanted was for people to look at it and sign it and put it on letterhead and send it back. So I was trying to personalize them to the nth degree because there was going to be somebody reading all those letters because you're asked for $25 million. You need to know that everybody's on board.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really was sort of an assembly line process. I would just, I would get my diffuser going with my sweet smelling scents. I had my ambient music in the background because no words. And I would just go. And it was helpful to do them all at once or in big batches of like 5 to 12 and send them out. And then I would upload them into the Dropbox. And I also drafted the email that was going to go, because that could be the same wording, the email introducing it to each person, so that the client agency was just cutting and pasting.
Nice.
Cutting and pasting. And that was very, very simple, but it included, and this is, I guess, why I can recite it to this day, but it's just, hey, thanks so much. We're so excited to be moving forward in this project. A letter of either support or commitment from you would really help us stand out. Please review this letter, make any changes once you have, print it out on letterhead, sign it, scan it, and return it as an email attachment to me by X. And we did not put the final deadline of the actual grant. We gave them a week, and then started tracking because we were on a little less than 6 weeks to pull all this together.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that there were any that dropped. There might have been one that was like a letter of support from a local elected official, but it would have been a nice to have, but it wasn't essential. But it was just putting my head down and making each one different. I'm not going to say, oh, they got the money because I know how to write a letter. I mean, I know how to write a letter, and they did get the money, but there were a lot of things coming together to make that a success. But I think having that level of support for this huge collaborative team did help make a difference. And I kept thinking this is just another way to tell the story of this grant. There's the narrative, there's the budget, there's the logic model, there are outcomes, and then there's another place for narrative. And so it helps me to think of it as just another way to get the point across.
Yeah. Well, and I like to, one of the things we didn't talk about, but you did mention in your story there was it's so important to be clear about how exactly you want it. Because I've had a few times where someone has mailed it directly to the funder. And I'm like, oh, they're not going to know that goes with our application. But they just thought since their name was on, that was who they were addressing. That's who they should send it to. So if you notice, Kimberly, when she emailed them, it's attached as a draft, changes you see fit, print on your letterhead, sign, scan, and email back to me. Like you think, oh, I shouldn't have to tell people that, but people don't know. They're not dealing with this support letters and grants on a daily basis. So
And if
give
it's
them
not
the
on letterhead,
it means nothing.
review, when I see it, I'm like, I don't want to say the glass is always half empty, but I'm like, y'all, I can't call you as the applicant, but
No,
you're giving me a blank piece of paper with a letter on it and no signature.
that's, or the signature is just a cursive font. I'm like, no. That doesn't mean anything either. I need a wet signature. I mean, it can be a digital image, but it needs to be a true signature, not just calligraphy font on your, you know.
And I can't. I mean, I good conscience, I can't count that because I just had that experience. I'm like, that could be from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's coming from a school district or a public health district, and it's not on their letterhead and it's not signed, then they probably aren't on board with this. So I bet you anything, they were just trying to get that letter and the person sent it back like that because they were super busy and they forgot
Yep.
It's like I spell it out every time. And I mean,
That's so smart.
no.
Yeah, you know. So well, there you have it, folks. The good news is you're rarely asked to submit 40 support letters. Usually
No. That was
2 to 3, maybe 5. Like I think,
most I'd ever done before that was 15.
yeah, I think 10 is probably around my max before. So hopefully nobody's having to undertake support letters at that scale. But if you are, you know how to do it now, right? And I would say that whether you're doing 1 or 20 or however, support letters can be one of those things that you do overlook, especially when you're looking at that long list of, I've got to have project narrative, I've got to have a budget, I've got to have this, I've got to have that. And it can be easy to wait till the last minute and then chaos reigns. So you just want to make sure that you are thinking about that early. Anytime I need something from somebody else, those are the things I want to tackle first because I don't want to have to sit around waiting for folks. So make sure you get those support letters early. So, you want them signed, sealed, and delivered right on time. Thanks again to today's sponsor, SNF Writing Solutions. If you want to learn more about all that Stacy and her team offer in terms of resources, coaching, grant writing, and more, visit snfwritingsolutions.com.
So we hope that these little stories and this information that we were sharing about different kinds of support letters can make your life a little bit easier if you're moving into some big, beefy grant proposals coming up. And if you don't currently work on applications of that size, you might in the future. So it's always a good idea to cultivate those skills. And more importantly, to make sure that you're connecting with the folks that you would like to ask in the future, that you're connecting with them.
Absolutely. So we're so honored you chose to spend time with us today. We hope you'll join us again in 2 weeks. We're going to be talking with a guest who's done a lot of work in the faith-based space of the grants field. She's got tons of insights to share, and I cannot wait for our chat with Dr. Janelle Harvey. We'll see y'all then.
Bye.